Hey everybody, Who's Your Jedi here with another review for you. This time I'm going to be talking about Season 1 of the show Ben 10. This is the first of what I call my retro reviews. This basically is where I'm going to be looking at something that aired a while back rather than something that aired just recently. I don't know, I haven't decided exactly yet how much of this I'm going to do, but if you like it, let me know in the comments and we'll see how things go from here. But anyway, getting into things. Ben 10 was created by the folks at Man of Action Studios. And this is four guys, Joe Casey, Joe Kelly, Steve Siegel, and Duncan, I'm not even going to try and say his name, who all have background working at DC and Marvel Comics, doing books like Superman, Alpha Flight, and X-Men. All talented guys who've all done work that I enjoy. And very clearly, Ben 10 clearly comes from that American comic book tradition, but it also it also very clearly has its own voice, let's call it that. So anyway, let's get right into it. And of course, let's talk about our main character, Ben Tennyson. Now, the thing here is that Ben is pretty much what you would expect of your average 10-year-old kid. He likes video games, he likes candy, he likes ice cream, he likes goofing around, playing pranks on people, he likes video games and trading card games and all this other stuff. And he's certainly not the most mature kid around, and not exactly overflowing with common sense either. But as we see in the first episode, where he helps another kid stand up to some bullies, ultimately at his core, Ben's a pretty decent kid, and he definitely does not like seeing other people push other people around. And this story arc, the story arc for this episode, is more or less about Ben's growth into being a real hero. Now, I think this is done quite a bit more low key than it would be on other shows for, say, an older character. And again, this sort of does make a lot of sense because Ben is 10 years old. All right, that is like what, the 4th or 5th grade? So, of course, he just simply by virtue of being that age isn't able to fully grasp that whole with great power comes great responsibility lesson that Spider-Man had. And now keep in mind, Spider-Man gained his powers when he was 15 years old. And while that is a gap of only 5 years, 5 years is naturally a very, very long time in terms of kids. I mean, think about how you were at 10, and if you are that age or past that age, how you were at 15. Well, I don't know about you folks, but I was definitely a fairly different person between those two. I definitely changed quite a bit as a person during that period of my life. So let's go on and hope that I can continue to talk properly. Now, as the series goes on, Ben does grow as a character, and I am glad for that. I do enjoy shows that do permit character growth. Now, as I said, it's fairly limited stuff, but as time goes by, we do see Ben protecting innocent people from threats more seriously. He starts willing to make sacrifices for the greater good of other people. The Sumo Slammer Cards episode, I think, is a very good example of this. And one of the things that I think was really most telling, and it was a very slight little thing, I think, is where he genuinely, after a while, compliments Gwen and acknowledges that she is talented. And of course, Gwen is quite thrilled by this. And it's something that we really would not have expected of the Ben that we meet in the first episode. But again, that's just the character growth of both Ben and Gwen. It has gone from what is really some fairly thinly concealed hostility in the first episodes to, by the end of the season, more or less good-natured bickering. Yeah, I mean, Gwen even says in one of the 12th episode, yes, that's the one, something along the lines of, "No one's allowed to make Ben miserable but me." And that really did, I think, encompass the fact that they have grown together. They're no longer two people who are kind of stuck together by circumstance. Ben and Gwen have bonded, and that I think was very nice and very sweet and genuinely good growth for both their characters. So anyway, let's keep going. Um, by the time this whole season wraps up, and what I have to admit is quite a genuinely exciting and fairly spectacular finale, I wouldn't quite say that Ben has risen to truly being a superhero. It's not like in the like look at Spider-Man, like the first Spider-Man movie with Tobey Maguire, where of course he sort of is mostly focusing on getting cars and getting a car to impress MJ and things like that. And by the end of it all, we have no doubt that Peter Parker has become a true hero. Here, while Ben has certainly become very brave and is willing to go out there and fight and protect innocent people, and has certainly done things that are unquestionably heroic. He's not there yet, I don't think. Ben isn't quite a hero. He still has that growth, but he has come a long way. He's made some important steps. He's started to learn. He's he's he is started to acknowledge that other people can make contributions to what he's trying to accomplish. He's learned to sacrifice things for the greater good. And he's learned to take moral stands against things that he knows are wrong. I mean, just look at the episode with Kevin if you need any proof of that. Anyway, we'll talk a little bit more about the finale later, but let's also talk about some of the other characters. Of course, we have Gwen, who sort of starts off very much in the Hermione mode of being the smart girl who's very knowledgeable, has more sense than the guys around her, but is still sort of grating and annoying. And like I said, over the course of the season, she does sort of find the equilibrium between her and Ben, where, they're not two people who are bickering and arguing with each other because they don't genuinely dislike each other. They're doing it just because they're family, and, bickering with your family is what people do. Ben and Gwen have really genuinely become maybe not exactly a team, but in a lot of ways they are kind of a duo. They get along well, and they trust each other. I think that's the big thing. They trust each other, they understand each other, and they have learned to complement each other. And yeah, that's really cool. And of course we have our third main character, who is Grandpa Max. And for a lot of this season, Grandpa is sort of an enigma. It's very clear from early on that he's not just a plumber, but he's something more. And I sort of like that by the end of the season, we still don't know exactly what Grandpa's deal is. But we do learn enough that we're eager to find out more about him next season. Now, in terms of characters, out of the three main characters, Max, of course, gets the least amount of growth, but he's set up with such an interesting such an interesting backstory that I'm actually willing to forgive the show for this. I really want to know more about what's going on with him next season. So anyway, let's take a look briefly at our main villain this season, who is Vilgax. Honestly, while I did get a sense of genuine threat, of real menace from Vilgax, as a character, I think he's fairly weak. He doesn't really have anything going for him as a character beyond being a generic evil alien warlord who wants to take over the galaxy, and only our plucky and, somewhat, actually very flawed hero is the only one that can stop him. So I think they could have done more with Vilgax as a character. And frankly, because of that, it sort of leads me into my other big complaint about this season, is that there were several episodes that you could completely chuck from this season, and they wouldn't really impact the overall story in any way. I mean, look at the one with the electric alien kind of in the hick tourist trap. I mean, as best I can tell, that had nothing to do with the overall arc of the series. You could completely skip that episode and it wouldn't mean anything. Now, granted, this is children's television. And children's television is generally written with the idea that kids maybe will not tune in to every single episode, so it's not super heavily serialized, simply so that if they miss an episode or two, they aren't going to tune in and be completely confused by what's going on. And I don't mind that, but I think they could have done a little bit better job of maybe just giving each episode a little touch, a small nod to the greater plot. I think if they'd done that, overall this would have been a much stronger season. Okay, so let's talk about the animation itself. Hailing from 2005, this is all fairly solid animation. I really have no complaints. It's not the most flashy work around, and it does 7 years later look just a tiny bit dated, but honestly, it's nothing I can really complain about. Of course, we also have to talk about the actors. Now, here is certainly one of the show's great strengths. You can't really go wrong by casting Tara Strong in your show. She's got so much amazing work under her belt. I've talked about her before. Raven on Teen Titans, Riku in Final Fantasy X, and just a million other things. And of course, she's the voice of Ben, and she brings it every single time. I mean, honestly, if it wasn't for the fact that I simply know that men, as they get older, lose the ability to kind of do that sort of childish voice, I would never have guessed that this was a woman. You know what? In retrospect, that comment seems really stupid. Let's forget I said that. Anyway, Tara Strong as Ben, she rocks. Megan Smith as Gwen. Oddly enough, this seems to be the main thing that she's known for. But that's no real knock against her. She does Gwen well. She really brings that and delivers that range of emotions and makes Gwen feel, honestly, as one of the as probably I think actually the most believable, the most real, at least in terms of me, emotionally, person out of our cast. And we have Paul Eating, I think is how you say his name, as Max, Grandpa. This guy, he's got a pretty nice resume as a voice actor. I was more than a little amused to see that he was Kang the Mad in the old Jade Empire game that BioWare put out. That was quite a bit of fun. And I was especially thrilled to see that he was Perceptor on the old Transformers show. I come from the generation of G1 Transformer fans, so seeing any of those guys pop up anywhere is always a real thrill for me. Let me see here. Okay, wow, there was a lot of stuff, more stuff that I wanted to talk about in terms of the characters in this show, but I just don't have time for it, so I will make a separate video for that later on. Right now, let's talk about the series overall. In general, the first season of Ben 10 is fairly solid. It only really suffers from the fact that it's very obviously a show that is taking some time to gel. And by the time we get to episode 13, it gels well. Episode 13, I mean, it's action-packed, it's interesting. I was really excited to see what was happening. I honestly didn't think they'd be able to tie up so much in just such a short amount of time. And it really is a testament to the folks that they were able to pull that off. So overall, Season 1 of Ben 10 is definitely something that I would think, if you're a fan of animation, worth your time. It's not without its flaws, but it's definitely a very good start to what looks to me to be a very promising series. And I will definitely be doing more Ben 10 reviews later on. I haven't decided if I'm going to be doing an individual episode reviews just yet, but definitely you will be seeing more Ben 10 from me. It's a good show. Give it a try. That's it. I'm almost out of time. As always, please comment, rate, and subscribe. You can also follow me on Twitter as Who's Your Jedi. Until next time, guys, take care and have a good one.